Hello again, everyone. It's Sherri again with stories and creating, reading and creating. Before I get started today, I want to show you what we made last week. I told you that I would let you know how mine came out. And as you can see, all the things that I put on my collage, we made a nature collage last week, in case you weren't with us last week. And we just used regular white glue to glue down a bunch of things from my yard and the park across the street. And this is how it turned out. Some of the leaves curled up at the edges a little bit, but not too bad. I hope if you made one, yours is holding up well too. Today we're going to read a story called Django. But before I read the story, I want to talk a little bit about the artist who did the pictures in this book, because the neat thing is that I actually know this lady personally, and I'm friends with her and was friends with her husband. Her name is Sherri McGinley, and not only does she do things like make pictures for picture books, which you'll get to see a lot of them today, but she does other artwork, and I'm wearing a t-shirt that she actually did the artwork for. Her husband was a musician, and a nickname of his was Father Folk, because he started a festival of folk music that we used to go to every year. And here you can see the picture of the people. And it says playing, singing, dreaming, dancing, and laughing. So the story was actually written by a man named John Seck, and Sharon did the artwork. When she talks about her artwork, she tells us that she always tells stories with her work, even artwork that isn't in a storybook. It's called narrative painting, and she usually uses a lot of nature. So let's get to the story, Django. Better? Okay, and there you see a really nice picture that she painted. Django lived way back in the woods with his mother and father and his grandma Thelma. Their house was made of cypress boards with chinks between them wide enough to let a moonbeam squeeze through, strong enough to hold back wind and rain. And there we see Django right in the middle. Django loved to listen to all sorts of sounds, especially the ones animals make, like the way a frog creaks in the pond and a dog oos at a train whistle. He loved the way your toes sing kush, kush, kush when you walk in the mud with your bare feet. He loved to make up his own sounds, too. That's how he got his name. It was his first sound when he was a baby. He mixed together da with jangle, added banjo for good luck, and out came Django. Django. How about that? And there he is. And you could see all those animals in the picture that he was talking about. Most of all, Django loved to fiddle. For years, his grandfather's fiddle had been tucked away at the bottom of the family trunk, snug between the holiday quilts. Django's father took it out one day and put it in the boy's hands. "I never could get very far with it," his father said, as he showed Django how to tune the strings. There he is with the banjo, the fiddle. Some people call it a violin. Django did the rest. One day he was screeching around the yard, and the next he was playing a sweet melody. From the time the chickens got up in the morning until the cows went to sleep at night, Django's fingers danced over the strings of his grandfather's fiddle. Soon Django was making up his own music. He strung all the bird songs he'd ever heard into one song. He was sitting on the fence playing the fiddle, and the birds began to settle everywhere. They stayed for the song, but then they stayed and helped themselves to the seeds they found in the garden. Uh-oh. Django's father was mad. He had to plant the garden all over again, and he almost took the fiddle away. But Django's mother said, We can't blame Django because his music makes the birds want to stop and listen. Django promised not to play bird songs anywhere near the garden anymore, and he kept his word. He knew the words like his own backyard. He knew the woods like his own backyard, and so he went there to try out any songs he thought the birds or animals might like. He made up one that had raccoons and possums for miles around, tapping their tails and slapping their paws. "It's a good thing we're a mile away from Daddy's garden," Django told the audience, as the last notes of his song drifted off between the trees. "You sure would be a lot of company for dinner." There he is. Even the bigger animals like to gather around and hear the music. But the more Django played in the woods, the more he forgot his chores around the house. Soon his mother was mad because Django didn't fill the wood bin or gather the eggs or fetch water or do any of the dozen things that he was supposed to do. "Seems to me that fiddle belongs back in the trunk," she said to Grandma Thelma. "Don't be too angry with the boy," Grandma Thelma said as she rocked. "He's just following his heart's desire, and it'll break his heart to lose that fiddle. Leave him be for a little while longer. He'll come around. You'll see." Here they are discussing what they should do about Django. Always playing music, not always getting his work done. One day, Django went into the woods with Grandma Thelma to help her pick blackberries. When they stopped for a rest, Django played a new song full of deep bass notes. It wasn't long before they heard loud rustling in the bushes behind them. Now, Grandma Thelma knew her way around the woods, too, and she could tell if a leaf was made to dance by a raindrop falling or a dragonfly springing, and she didn't like the weight of some of those rustlings. They had a bear in them, maybe two. "Just keep playing," she whispered, "and we'll ease around and head for home." "It's all right, Grandma," Django whispered back. "They won't bother us. I've seen them before. It's a mama bear and her cub." Look at that. He even charmed the bears in the woods. There they are. Looks like they're dancing, having a good time. Grandma Thelma was in no mood to stop and visit, so they hurried back home through the woods. But the bears followed them into the pasture where the horses were grazing right up to the porch steps. The horses bolted at the first whiff of the bears, and it took Django and his father a whole afternoon to find them and coax them back to their meadow. That did it. The fiddle went back to its silent place in the trunk. Oh, no. Yeah. You can't have bears coming right up to the doors, scaring all the horses. After that, the wood bin was full, the eggs were gathered, and the dishes were dried and stacked nice and neat on the shelves. The garden was hoed and watered, and the porch was swept clean. But something was missing. The chickens knew it. They laid fewer eggs. The cows knew it. They gave less milk. The birds stopped singing outside the house, and Django just wasn't himself during those hot, still, quiet days. Oh, boy. I think they're missing all that music. Then one day, the sky turned gray, then black, then purple-black. The wind whipped the tops of the trees into tangles, and it drove the rain sideways at the house, trying to push it between the cypress boards. It's a real storm. Look at those trees blowing around. And we would know what was happening even without the hordes, wouldn't we? That's a storm, all right. Django and Grandma Thelma and Django's mother and father all sat close together in the kitchen waiting for the storm to pass, but it grew stronger, and soon it was trying to tear the shingles off the roof, and soon it was howling and running into trees and knocking them over on its way to who knows where. "The woods will be flooding," Django's father said, rubbing his chin. "It's a good thing we're on high ground, but those animals out in the woods are going to be in a terrible fix, even the ones that can swim." "We need to help them," Django cried. "Now, Django, there's nothing we can do for those poor creatures," his mother told him. "Can I play my fiddle for them?" Django asked. "They know my songs, and maybe a few of them will hear and follow the sounds up here." "They won't hear a thing in this storm, son," his father said. "But you sure can play. We could all use some music right now. And so they got the fiddle out of the trunk. Let the Django play. So the fiddle was out of the trunk again, and Django played while the storm howled around the house. By nightfall, Django ran out of the songs he knew, and he found himself climbing the notes of a melody he had never played before. He's making up more songs. The songs had ripples in it that sounded like water rushing down a stream, splashing against smooth stones, and then lingering at a bend among some red and yellow leaves. The melody had a sadness in it for all the animals caught in the storm, and for all the broken, fallen trees. Django's song had the mist of morning in it when the first whippoorwill sings and the world wakes up again. He sure can make some pretty music. I like this picture especially. Django played the song softly through the night and into the morning until Grandma Thelma and his parents stirred themselves awake and his father put the kettle on. The wind and rain had stopped, the lightning and thunder had quit shaking the house, but now other sounds moved about and all around them. The roof was sighing and settling, and outside the porch was purring. Now whatever can that be? Grandma Thelma asked as she began to open the shutters. Well, 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 she said, in the way that meant she was truly surprised. Looks like we've got company. What do you think is out there, you guys? Uh-huh. On every spot above the reach of the rising water, birds and animals were waiting out the storm, listening to Django's best song ever. And as they listened, slowly, slowly, a light wind pulled the clouds apart like tufts of cotton, and let the sun shine through. Paris Miracle was their nearest neighbor from the next farm along the spring, and he came to see if Django and his family were all right. There was so much water in the woods and the fields that he had to row over in his boat, and he couldn't get near the house because of all the animals that were perched on it and resting all around. Later, he told everyone, it was just like Noah's Ark. Look at that. Even the bear and her cub came. Dear birds. After that storm, the fiddle never went back into the trunk again. Django managed to get his chores done mostly, except he might be a little late if he was in the middle of a new tune. The birds left the garden alone, pretty much, and that summer the horses and cows even got used to the bear and her cubs dropping by for an evening concert. Music travels fast in the woods, and Django's music traveled everywhere. People came from miles away to sit on the porch and listen to him fiddle, and soon they were talking to Django. They were taking Django all over to play for their weddings and socials and their wingdings and holiday dances. He got famous. Everybody liked his music. Why, Django was even invited to Washington to play for the president's birthday, and he made up a new bird song for the occasion that filled the trees around the White House with cardinals and doves and bluebirds. But there was one song Django always saved for the long walks he took back in the woods, the song he found on the night of the storm. The song that was like a dream, of feathers and warm fur, of shadows swaying high up in the branches of the trees. All this happened years and years ago, but folks around here say that on a quiet moonlit evening, if you go deep into the heart of the woods, you can still hear Django playing his song. And the animals, well, the animals are dancing. Look at that. I like that story. This is a book that if you had it at your house, even if you couldn't read, you could turn the pages and tell that story back to your parents or your grandma or your uncle just by looking at the pictures. It tells what happened. So today we're going to make something, and I got inspired by the artist's colors. All those different and bright colors. She uses a lot of bright colors in her pictures, doesn't she? And I thought today would be a good day to make a colorful butterfly. So, what you need, if you can do it later or do it along with me, if you want to pause the video and come back, is a paper plate and a coffee filter, or if you don't have coffee filters at your house, if nobody drinks coffee or you don't drink that kind, a piece of paper towel will work too. You can trim it to be like a circle, or you don't have to. We're going to use the coffee filter today because it makes a nicer picture, nicer thing. And what we're going to make, I'll show you before we start, is a butterfly. And all it takes is some paper, a coffee filter, and some water, and some food coloring. Okay, so if you're using a coffee filter, put this so we can see. If you're using a coffee filter, kind of do that, crease it so that it lays a little bit flatter. It'll get flatter as you put water in it. And then spray it or sprinkle it with water lightly. You want it wet. You don't want it quite sopping. I'm going to do it over here because I don't want to spray water near the computer. And you shouldn't either. Okay, that might be enough. There we go. Now here's our wet coffee filter. And then all you do is, with the help of your parents or your grown-ups, whoever's there with you, squeeze out some little drops of food coloring right on to the coffee filter. And if you notice what's happening, the food coloring is following where the water is and spreading out, bleeding. It's getting absorbed into not just where you dropped it, but into the rest of the filter. I'm just going to use 3 colors for mine: blue and red and yellow. Put a little bit of yellow with the blue, a little bit of green. If you have other colors that you want to use, that's fine too. You can do that. You can spray a little bit of water on it if you think that it's not bleeding enough, but it will continue to do that for quite a while. This is just about what my coffee filter looked like last night when I did one. And then I put it aside to dry. I let it dry overnight. It has to get good and dry, so you won't be able to make your butterfly the same day that you do this probably. Let's put it aside to dry like I did before, and I'll show you the one that I colored last night so you can see. Even though I didn't use green or purple, we've got some green and kind of brownish purple because the colors blended together. So this one's dry, and now it's time to make it into a butterfly. So you take it off of the paper plate that you were using, and you start folding it like this. We call this an accordion fold because you fold it a little bit, and then you fold, turn it over and fold it again. Turn it over and fold it again. Somebody might need to help you get started, but once you get started, you get onto it. It's pretty easy. And you keep doing that until you get all the way to the end. And then you take I'm going to put the whole screen up now because I think we can see. You take a clothespin and you put it here like this. This is like the butterfly's body. And actually, I think we should do it this way. And then you just take your fingers and you open up those butterfly wings don't know. I think maybe the one that I used the paper towel with came out a little bit better. It depends what kind of wings you want your butterfly to have. You can always trim them, do whatever you want to do to make it look how you want it to look. All right, so you can put it like that or like this. It doesn't really matter. Whatever looks the best to you. Okay. If you want to get really involved, you can take a pen and draw some eyes on there. You could attach some antennas somehow. What I like the best about it, though, is just the colors and how beautiful they are. All right. Thanks for coming today and listening to our story. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.